Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. After the blunder by the Minister of State for Home claiming that India doesn't know where Dawood Ibrahim is, the Pakistan High Commissioner has told this program that his country's stand that Dawood is not in Pakistan has been clearly vindicated. More importantly, the High Commissioner has revealed that to the best of his knowledge, India has never asked in writing for the extradition of Dawood Ibrahim. These and many other revelations are part of an interview with High Commissioner Abdul Basit in part 2. But first, yesterday, Sonia Gandhi launched a stinging attack on the government. She called it a government of some people by one person for a select few. She says it's an assault on everything precious that India stands for. Is Sonia Gandhi right, or has she forgotten her mother-in-law's emergency and the terrible corruption her own government was associated with? That's our first debate tonight. And joining me now to discuss Sonia Gandhi's attack on the government is BJP spokesperson Sambit Patra, BJD MP Pinaki Mishra, Congress MP Shushmita Dev, and the political editor of The Hindu, Varghese George. Sambit Patra, let me quote what Sonia Gandhi has said. She says, "We are faced with a government which assaults everything precious that India stands for." She adds, "This government deserves credit for redefining democracy. It's no longer of the people, by the people, for the people, but a government of some people by one person for a select few." How do you respond to Sonia Gandhi?
In the current sense, it's a rhetoric question. Let the answer also be a rhetoric in the sense what Sonia ji perceives as precious, I perceive that, and most of the country also perceives that as poisonous. I mean, she says what Congress and India stands for. Does she mean to say that India stands for what Congress stands for? Congress stood for two important reasons all these years. Number one, a family dynasty, and number two, corruption. Rightly pointed out that some of the most humongous corruptions that the world over was seen, that the country had ever seen, was during the Congress regime. And let's not forget about the fact which was divulged by many of the writers who belonged to the Congress then. Sanjay Baru's book as to how Pulak Chatterjee ran with files to Sonia ji, and as to how Sonia was the pivot of the whole government that was puppeted by Manmohan Singh. So when Sonia Gandhi says that the government is managed by some people, she should realize the fact that it is the ego of the dynasty speaking, knowing very well that a poor chaiwala has ultimately become the Prime Minister of the country in spite of the warning by the Congress, particularly by Manish Shankar Iyer, कि chaiwala किसी भी कीमत पे प्रधानमंत्री नहीं बन सकता है.
Shushmita Dev, Mrs. Gandhi says that this government is an assault on everything precious that India stands for. Has Mrs. Gandhi forgotten her mother-in-law's emergency, which was an assault on democracy, it was an assault on human freedom, and everyone, including congressmen, would say it was the worst thing that's ever happened in independent India? How has Sonia Gandhi forgotten what her mother-in-law did when she was living in the house at that time?
See, Karan, if you want to enter upon a debate about what happened in the 1970s, and if you expect that we as a party in the opposition will now start looking for valid moral grounds before we open our mouth against how this government is functioning, I think that premise is wrong. The fact that Mrs. Gandhi was trying to highlight is that this Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, repeatedly in his campaign assured the nation of transparency, of accountability. And as the leader of our party in the opposition, she will continue to do her duty to point out where the Modi government has consistently failed to deliver, and there's a huge deficit between their campaign and their delivery in the last 11 months.
All right, that's very interesting. You've decided, of course, for the purposes of this discussion this evening, that history begins in May 2014. You've forgotten completely assaults on the most valued and the most precious things of India done earlier. Fine, that's understandable, because obviously that would otherwise embarrass you. But I just want to point out for the audience that you're beginning history in May 2014. Let's come, Pinaki Mishra, to some of the details of the argument put out by Sonia Gandhi. I'm going to quote her again. She says, "They," meaning the government, "deserve credit for the most anti-farmer amendments to our land acquisition bill. They deserve credit for ignoring the severe plight of farmers throughout the country in a show of callous concern that has never been seen before. Now, as a party which your Chief Minister today said is equidistant between Congress and BJP, is Sonia Gandhi right when she says this?
Well, Karan, personally speaking, I was there in the House. I didn't find the intervention so exceptional. I mean, it was a written speech. She read it out. In Parliament, in the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, you're not supposed to read out speeches.
Actually, I'm quoting what she said at the parliamentary party meeting of the Congress party yesterday. It was all the papers today. Do you agree with that statement about land acquisition?
But this rhetoric now has become the showpiece of the Congress. So therefore, she says nothing new that Mr. Rahul Gandhi hasn't repeated again and again. Everybody is buffeting this government on land acquisition. And our party too has very major concerns on land acquisition. Today the Chief Minister briefed all the members of Parliament on what his views were. So therefore, I think on that score, on the land acquisition front, the government appears to be increasingly isolated, because we have put up a proposal that there must be substantial stakes given to the
Pinaki, I don't want to go into your proposal. This is about Sonia Gandhi's rhetoric. Do you agree with her rhetoric or not? That's the question.
It's nothing new. It's nothing new. It's repetitive every day. They're repeating the same thing day in, day out. And, basically they're throwing punches at the government, basically all on the same lines at the same parts of the body.
Okay.
So there's nothing new about this.
Varghese George, let me bring you in. And I'm going to remind you of Sonia Gandhi's phrase that this is an assault on everything precious that India stands for. Now, it so happens that Mr. Modi has accepted her government's insurance policy. Mr. Modi has accepted today her government's land boundary agreement with Bangladesh. The real difference is, in fact, over land acquisition. Does that amount to, in your eyes, an assault on everything precious that India stands for?
Well, I think she was speaking on the values that the Congress stands for, and she, as usual, and as rhetorically as every other panelist have mentioned, she equated those values with the values that the country stands for, or constitutional values. And while the Congress has been supportive of these measures that you mentioned, particularly on the economic field and in foreign policy, the questions that she raised have been of particular concern for she personally, right to information and land particularly. Both these issues have been sort of her own personal initiatives through the National Advisory Council, and those pieces of legislation have been showcased by the Congress party as something of its own. So the amendments or changes to that, I think she is trying to project that. And I don't think we can blame her for that. Okay. Actually, the Congress party's failure over the last 2 years, prior to the last election, I mean, Congress had failed to match Narendra Modi's rhetoric. If Sonia Gandhi is trying to do that catch-up and trying to pay back the Prime Minister in his own style and in terms of rhetoric, one cannot fault her for that. Okay. I think that is an attempt by the Congress and
I take your point.
Leadership.
Samit Batra, let's pick up, in fact, on one critical point made by Mrs. Gandhi while she was speaking in the Lok Sabha. She pointed out that critical institutions like the CVC and the CIC do not have a head. She pointed out that the entire Lokpal is empty. Today, you've appointed one election commissioner, but there's still one election commissioner post that's vacant. And the cabinet secretary, by the way, is now ending his second 6 months extension. And there's no replacement. Why are these critical posts, which are institutionally so important to the country, empty?
Karan, there is no doubt that this question is a very critical question, and that was the reason as to why Jitendra Singh, the Minister of DOPT in PMO, in fact gave a very academic answer post by post. And since there is a constraint of time, I'll just take few seconds to elaborate upon it. The CVC is vacant because we have adopted a very transparent means of going ahead with it, in sense that we have advertised on the newspaper, which was previously not done.
But it's been empty for 8 months.
No, because the procedure is on. The last meeting was on 6th of
But that excuse would allow you to keep it empty for the next 5 years.
Let me just complete a few seconds more, and thereafter you can question me further. The CIC is empty because there is a court procedure going on, and the court has asked, rather the CVC is off because the court has asked that all proceedings has to be taken with the court, and that's the reason as to why the next date of hearing in the court is in July. As far as the Lokpal is concerned, we know only on the insistence of Congress, the Lokpal's amendment bringing the LOP, I mean since the LOP post was not there, bringing the member of the largest party, that is Mr. Kharge from opposition, to the bandwagon. This amendment had to be sent to the standing committee on the insistence of the political parties.
In other words, Congress is to blame or the courts are to blame. Let me bring you in, Shushmita Dev, and I want to go back to that phrase because it was so evocative and powerful, but some would say so hypocritical as well, that this is an assault on everything precious India stands for. What Mrs. Gandhi has ignored is that in the last 1 year, the Modi government has not been accused and cannot be accused, as far as I know, of even one single instance of corruption or scam or any involvement of any minister in corruption. And remember, your government had a very different track record on the issue of corruption. Surely that is something Mrs. Gandhi should bear in mind before she starts hitting out at the Modi government.
Mr. Thapar, what I'd like to say is, this whole thing about no corruption was also stated by the Honorable Finance Minister in his reply to the budget speech, saying no one spoke of corruption. But India stands for many things. And let me tell you, or let me ask you rather, that in the last 11 months or 11 and a half months, how many times has the word communal attacks on church, security of the minority being used in the last 11 months?
You substituted one word for another because it suits you. You may be right on the communal front, but on the corruption one, please concede. I pointed out something that Mrs. Gandhi forgot. This government so far is scam-free. You were not.
Scam-free. Yes, it claims to be scam-free. I don't want to delve into why Rajnath Singh Ji's son was called by Narendra Modi, why Mr. Govt was removed as a railway minister to the law minister. I don't want to get into that and what his son was up to. But the question is, today if this government holds itself out as an honest government, it is answerable to the nation about the security of the minority.
I don't want this program to get caught up in libel exchanging between the two of you because you think it's a convenient way of settling scores. I'm afraid I've run right out of time. We have a very important interview with the High Commissioner of Pakistan, one that in fact makes very substantive claims that the country ought to hear. I'm ending this there because I need to keep time for that interview, and my apologies to Pinaki Mishra and Varghese George for that fact. Time for a break, but then an interview with the Pakistan High Commissioner which covers the blunder by the Minister of State for Home, Zaki Urman, Lakvi Hafiz Saeed, the prospects for a political dialogue and the reassertion of the claim that Kashmir in Pakistani eyes is a core issue.